All right, welcome everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for our webinar, Microsoft Teams Under the Hood. Just before we get started, I want to go over a couple housekeeping items. Questions are obviously encouraged throughout the entire webinar. So if you just look in the bottom right hand of your screen, you can submit any and all questions there, and we will likely address them at the end during our Q&A portion. We may get to a couple during the webinar as we see fit. And secondly, this is an interactive webinar, so there will be a couple of polls that I will throw up on your screen, and you can just go ahead and click the screen to submit your answer. And finally, there will be a recording of this presentation as well as the slide deck sent to you via email over the next couple of days. So my name is Maddie Regis. I am the Marketing Content Coordinator for NetGain Technologies. And with me today is Karaline Wood, and I'm going to have her introduce herself.
Thanks, Maddie. So some background with me and my experience in Teams. I have lived and breathed the platform over the past 2 years, and from when NetGain first introduced it to the company to today, where it's become our primary means of maintaining communication across all of our branches within the NetGain family. So I've also provided Teams trainings to various NetGain clients within different industries. So I know what kinds of opportunities and challenges communication platforms can bring to small and medium-sized businesses. I see and I feel it firsthand, and from personal and professional experience, finding the right platform can make a huge difference in creating connections and cohesion within an organization. At this point, I'm basically drinking the Teams Kool-Aid. So I'm excited to be here today to talk to you about the platform and how it might be able to help your employees and your business.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's jump into it. So I think the first thing we've kind of got to discuss when we start to talk about collaboration tools and specifically Teams is, everybody's heard it 1,000 times, but the workplace really has massively changed over the last year and a half due to the pandemic. So, we've got these new remote workspaces as well as kind of hybrid work setups where you're partially remote, partially in the office. But that definitely kind of changes how everything is operating. So Karaline, why don't you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so jumping off of exactly what Maddie just said, while remote work is not a new workplace model by any means, this past year or so has seen an increased rise in the need for it as companies have shifted their workforce more fully into the digital world. Surveys are finding remote work and hybrid work models have brought a lot of opportunity to both business owners and their employees in terms of productivity and work-life balance. A lot of people are finding that productivity is better or the same at home, and employees with flexible work options are reporting better work-life balance and greater job satisfaction. So that's been one of the positive outcomes of these kind of transitions we've been kind of voluntold to make, And now in terms of the job market, professionals are expecting remote work to become more of the standard, and 97% of employees don't want to return to the office full time. So remote work is becoming more of a draw for job seekers.
Yeah, I think I'm definitely in that 97% camp. It was an interesting transition for sure, but now I definitely see the benefit of it. I see the work-life balance. I like being able to jump off a meeting and go start some laundry and then hop back into work. It's definitely super convenient. So for me personally, I 100% agree with that.
Most definitely. Me too, Maddie. Yeah, so with this shift to more of a remote work model, companies and organizations pretty much across all industries are asking for more tools and applications to help facilitate their transformation to remote and hybrid work models. So we are officially stepping into a new age of digital collaboration and communication outlets.
Absolutely. And so with that, as we start to discuss these various tools, I've got my first poll for the audience. So, do you use one tool or separate tools for file sharing, conference calls, chat, other things like that? And we've got a couple different options there by one tool, I mean, you maybe just use WebEx for conferencing or just Jabber, but you're not really using a variety of tools. Multiple tools is a bunch of different things, maybe Google Docs, WebEx, things like that. Or maybe you're mostly relying on one tool with a few additional, or maybe you're not using any collaboration tools at all. I'd be surprised by that, but you never know. So yeah, let's take a look at what we are seeing here. So it looks like most people are using multiple tools. So that's interesting. I think, Karaline, is that what you've been seeing among our clients? Kind of what's your experience in the field with that?
Yes, most definitely. I think most companies usually have a lot of tools they run in-house. We live in the digital age and apps are aplenty. And while it's fun to explore new ones and have all kinds of fancy tools on hand, I know it can also kind of create some chaos. And the transition we all made to remote work forced a lot of us to take a more critical look at the tools we had for video conferencing, file sharing, file storage, and I can attest to net gain in our journey into remote work. I remember it pretty clearly. We were all in the office on a Friday, and then on Monday, our workforce was remote. So it was a very quick transition, but Teams specifically enabled us to pivot quickly and fairly seamlessly without impacting our service and support to clients. So I know some of our clients have undergone, a similar shift to Teams or are currently undergoing that transition right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that makes sense. It's just kind of a streamlined sort of situation for everyone, but everybody's kind of at a different stage in that journey. So getting into that, we've got our meat of our presentation, which is about collaboration and communication digitally and what tools are available to you. So Karaline, why don't you jump into that?
Yeah, thank you, Maddie. So from independent startups to large technology enterprise companies, there's a growing number of tools available for shifting our teams and collaboration online. Some tools have more limited collaboration features, focusing solely on like group chat or messaging, but others offer a full suite of tools for file sharing and storage, video conferencing, live call and chat features, and even calendar management. But really, every application comes with a different price tag and demands from users. There are typically like tiered pricing models where you pay more to access more tools or storage capabilities. Some tools, though, can be entirely free to use if you want to explore more of the basic functions of the app. Many businesses have found leveraging one tool versus multiple applications has enabled their teams to work a little bit more efficiently. There can be less noise, if you will, and potential confusion when you work within one tool versus several for different purposes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, as part of the marketing department at NetGain, prior to using Teams internally, we kind of had sort of like a Frankenstein's monster of different apps, some of which you see here. We dabbled in Skype and WebEx a little bit. Personally, I had used Trello before, so I would use that every once in a while for some tasks and checklists, but it was, everything was kind of in its own separate hub. So it's nice now with Teams basically has all of that and it's all in one place. So just for me personally, it makes it a lot more efficient. I think everybody in the company would agree with me that it's just nice to have everything all in one spot and to have a lot of tools at your disposal within that. And oh, sorry about that. And yeah, you can go ahead and speak to this slide.
Yeah, so what does a good collaboration tool have? A versatile communication outlet will offer you multiple tools to help your team focus and organize how they connect with one another and share information. A good tool should also be compatible with multiple operating systems, making it versatile for a wide range of users and whatever tech that they're using on a day-to-day basis. A good tool should also have some integration capabilities with other applications and software. So you can synchronize the outlets you store information and how you communicate with colleagues. So like we said before, you might be running multiple applications for different purposes based on the kind of projects that you're working on. And having one application that syncs with maybe those different outlets helps you to kind of create some more efficiencies and to streamline some of that work that you're doing. So moving on, so why do you need a collaboration tool? One thing would be focus. Helps to have multiple tools all in one place. You don't have to divide your attention across multiple applications for file sharing, group chat, calendar management, etc. Offering flexibility, you can access the platform from anywhere when it does have some capabilities of having multiple versions. So you can work on web browser, a phone, or a desktop. Teams is compatible with iOS and Android operating systems, so it does not discriminate in that regard. Reliability too, syncs directly with your cloud storage platform. So you've got assurance that your content and data is backed up and secure, as well as versatility. That's another key feature. Does it integrate with other applications and tools? Your primary collaboration tools should be able to integrate with other tools that you have to run your business. It should act more of a bridge to connect your communication outlets together, and specifically for teams. They are constantly expanding their integration capabilities. So versatility in this regard will continue to grow over time.
Absolutely. And so now that we've kind of discussed some of that, let's get into our headliner, which is Microsoft Teams. And one thing I just did want to mention, because I think it's kind of fun. I don't know if anybody in the audience has been watching the Olympics, but I know I have. And I've seen actually a lot of advertisements for Microsoft Teams, a lot of commercials. So it's pretty cool to know that Team USA is using it as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great example. And it just shows how Teams can also be used, in new and creative ways and on different scales too. So what is Teams? Teams is an application that has transformed how a lot of businesses operate, particularly over the past couple of years. It's used in many different capacities across most industries and many kinds of organizations and companies. Teams is a tool that NetGain leverages quite heavily for our own means of connecting with one another while we still work in a hybrid work capacity. Prior to Teams, like as Maddie said earlier, marketing used email, SharePoint, Jabber, WebEx, and Google Docs to collaborate. So today, Teams has enabled us to focus our work and communications more within one place, which has allowed us to be more agile and aligned as a unit. What is Teams? Teams is a communication platform that serves as a central hub for collaboration in Microsoft 365, integrating people, content, and tools to help organizations become more engaged and efficient. It's a headline tool in the Office 365 library, and it can be accessed anywhere as long as you've got connection to the internet. So there are web browser, desktop, and mobile versions, which makes the application quite versatile for accessing it on the go, at home, and in the office, really whenever and wherever you need it. What does Microsoft Teams do? The headline features are calendar management, file sharing and storage, chat, and even project management. You can also run webinars and live events through Teams. And it does offer a number of integrations with other applications too.
Yeah, and I think we've got an interesting sort of quadrant here showing, obviously, as we saw on one of the previous slides, there are a large variety of these kind of communication solutions, but you can see that Microsoft is up there with the leaders and the visionaries, and they're kind of at the top. So I think this is definitely one of the best in class solutions that's out there at this time. So I just think that's pretty cool to check out. But now I think we're actually going to jump into demonstrating some of the tools that Karaline just brought up. So Karaline, I'm going to go ahead and throw the screen over to you so that you can share Teams with us.
Yeah, awesome. Let me find my screen share. Okay, can you see my screen, Maddie?
I can.
Is it up? Okay, awesome. So let's actually hop into Teams together and show you some of the key tools and features and actions. So first, I want to touch on the flexibility of the platform and how you can access Teams in different ways. So starting from our Office 365 account, mine specifically, I want to show you how you can directly access Teams via a web browser. So as you can see, I'm currently logged into my Office 365 account. And from this dashboard, I can access a number of different Microsoft tools, and Teams is located right in the thick of it. So this is what Microsoft Teams via web browser will look like. And now I'm going to pull up the desktop version so that you can get a side-by-side view of how similar each iteration of Teams looks like between the web and the desktop version. So that is something that I think is really great about Teams, is you don't have too much of a difference in terms of the interface between different versions of the platform. So we'll go full screen with this now. Now, I do want to note there are some very slight differences between each version of Teams. But they all will have the same tools and overall functionality between the different versions. My preference personally is the desktop application, as I feel it's a little bit more reliable in terms of performance when you're running Teams on, via the web browser version. You have to keep in mind, like clearing your cache, clearing your cookies, all of that jazz, so you don't have to worry about that in the desktop version. I also love to have all kinds of windows and tabs open in Chrome. So using the desktop version helps me to keep Teams a bit more separated from the mix of again. So once again, everyone, flexibility with Teams. So now let's actually hop into Teams and look at some of the main tools that Teams offers, such as my Teams channels, different chat features and files. So we'll actually start at the top of the screen over here on the left. So these are the main tools, and we'll start with activity. So this feed, if you will, is kind of a summary of everything that's happening in Teams that you are a member of. And this is where you're going to see a feed of your notifications, such as chat activities, calls, meetings, invitations to the Teams, mentions in chats. You can even see where some of the people have reacted to some of my messages that I sent them. And you can also even see some in-office and out-of-office notices here next to some of these profile pictures. So that's also kind of a cool feature to have if you're wanting to message somebody and it shows that they're currently not available. You could even set up like notifications for yourself to where when they do become available, you get like a little ping. So just a little side note, different cool features in Teams. And now let's actually move on to our next icon, Teams. And this is where you will see all of the different teams and channels that you are a part of. As you can see, I am a part of several teams. Some of these groups are a bit more private with like only a few people involved, but others are quite large. We even have one that's company-wide that includes over 100 people, this company water cooler right here, which is pretty fun. And we'll actually take a look at that a little bit later. So for teams and channels specifically, this is where you can really organize some of the projects, files, to-do lists, and whatnot within each of your team's groups. So we're going to hop into marketing right here, and this general channel, which if you notice, I have a general channel on each one. That's kind of like the default channel. And as you can see here, you've got some different tabs for organizing some of the things that you're working on. So posts, that's kind of your chat feed, if you will. And we have files. And then these are some tabs that we've added ourselves to keep some of the work that we have going on a bit more organized. File collaboration is something we do a lot within our Teams group. So that feature is pretty active, and let's see, while we're in this Teams group, let's go ahead and we'll show you what file collaboration looks like, active file collaboration. So here are some files that we've got. And as you can see, you do have additional organization measures within your files too, if you want to set up different folders. And you also, side note too, you can set up different permissions for some of your files too, if you want people to only view some documents, or if you want to give them like editing and viewing privileges too. So we're going to open basics of password user management because you know what? I need to make an update to this document. So as you can see, and this is a Word document. And what's really great about Teams is you can actually go in and edit a Word document within Teams. You don't have to open Word at all. You can do it right here. And what do you know? Somebody else is in this document. Maddie, are you making changes too? Yes, she is. And I can see where she's at actually in the document. So like Maddie pointed out earlier, I know like before Teams, we're gonna go on a bit of a story time here. Before Teams, document collaboration, if you wanted to do it in real time, I typically used Microsoft Documents. And then even before that, it would be like emails back and forth of like version 1, version 2, version 3. And then you just had to hope that as you're updating your version of it, someone else isn't also like making changes. So it could be a bit confusing, a bit chaotic, tossing around different versions of documents to your final version. So this is really where Teams is pretty awesome, in my humble opinion. So as you can see too, within Teams, there's a lot of options for file management for different editing purposes too. So it's quite similar to actually like Microsoft Word, what that looks like in terms of fonts and whatnot. So I'll get off on that tangent now. So let's go back and we'll go into some other aspects of Teams together.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm the content coordinator, so I write all of our blogs, I put together PowerPoints, things like that. So it's really nice to be able to put that into Teams and say, hey, let's go collaborate on this document. Everybody can be in it at once, make changes, and then everyone has access to that document as well. So it's just all in one central hub. It definitely makes my life a lot easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely agree. And another like side comment too that I want to bring up is depending upon some of the file permissions that you do have set for your different documents and files, you can even copy some documents to different teams to where you can share across your team. So collaboration doesn't necessarily have to happen just within your team. It can be across the board depending upon like what you're trying to do. So definitely versatile. And now let's hop into the chat tool. Here's the next one. Next tool on this navigation pane on the left. And this is where all of your chats will be housed, and you can connect with people internally or external contacts that might have joined in a Teams meeting you've invited them to. Typically, any external people will be labeled as like a guest, so you can easily differentiate, outside versus inside communications. Teams will document the full chat history. So if you want to reference a conversation from weeks or even months ago, you can do that here. I can like scroll back through this and we'll see if it loads and we can get some different date steps on here. So I can definitely tell you that this is something that I found in very handy as I've gone through different chat histories, like, oh, somebody suggested, maybe like how to respond to an email. I can't remember what their suggestion was. You can filter through and find that old chat that you had back and forth. Chats can be between 2 people or involve a large group. For instance, here, this is a chat between 3 people, but I also have some groups that are quite large, where it can be like more of a larger chat. Some groups are a bit more active than others, and there's a lot of conversations going back and forth. So you do have options to mute different groups or even hide them if you don't want to see like pings popping up all the time at the top of your, your chat feed, if you will. So chats can also be tied to meetings. And as you can see with this calendar icon here, this is a chat that I have going on with some of the meeting groups that I have. And we can actually, you know what, we can demonstrate a quick chat too. So it can be anything from like, you know, simple word message, or if you want to get a little bit fancier with it, you do have a bunch of different options here for formatting. If you want to send a link, I mean, you can even have a little fun with it, and you can send some emojis or a GIF, and you can even send calendar invites and schedule a meeting directly from a chat. So that's pretty cool too. And I do want to give one shout out to one Teams group in particular, and that is our company water cooler. Let me see, and I will bring up that chat history. I think I kind of teased this a little bit later when I was poking around here, but you know, that's one of the things with this past year. Our company, and pretty much every company, has gone through a lot of changes with what their workplace looks like, and cultivating company culture is something that's been a challenge for many of us over the past year. And what we tried to do to kind of help reinvigorate our company culture was create a company-wide team to bring some of our in-office banter and those kind of connections to our home offices. So we have had a ton of fun with it, sending gifts and emojis of little shout outs and responding to messages. So Teams has helped us to bring a little bit of fun back into the mix while our employees have been working remotely. So quick shout out to that.
Yeah, I think my favorite is the work from home setup, where one of our colleagues was showing off his coworker, which was his cat. So it's nice to, you know, just have those little interactions that kind of bring us together. You know, obviously, you know, I can't walk over to Karaline's desk, whether it's just to chat or ask her a question about work. So I think both the chat feature and having this particular Teams channel where we all come together as a company has really helped over the past year when we've been, you know, kind of separate for so long.
Yeah, most definitely. Moving right along to our next icon here on the left is calendar, the calendar tool. And since Teams syncs directly with Outlook, this is really just a duplicate of my Outlook calendar. It's going to function very similarly to Outlook, where you'll be able to see your meetings for the day, the week, the month, if you will. And you can send out meeting invites directly from Teams with this new meeting function right here. And you can even huddle up with people, you know, on an ad hoc basis with this Meet Now option. A really neat feature within the calendar tool, I personally think, is the chat feature. You know, as we touched on, you know, just a few moments ago, a good usage case for that would be, I've got a meeting coming up and my current meeting is running a little bit over. I can actually pull this up and chat with participants and let them know, hey, I'm going to be, you know, maybe like 5 minutes late or whatnot. So that's kind of a cool feature with the calendar tool.
Yeah, I think also when you're meeting, there's a chat for the particular meeting, with which Karaline kind of pointed out before, but I just really like that. For me, I'm somebody who, when we're talking about something, I want to just, you know, share that document right then and there, and I can do that in the chat. Or I want to make a note of, hey, somebody shared a really good idea and I don't want to, you know, let it kind of just fall by the wayside. So I send it to everybody, or you can actually make notes that everybody can see as well within the meetings. So it's just, it's really kind of an all-encompassing, super powerful tool, which I just think is awesome.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, especially if I'm in a larger meeting with like 20, 30, 50 people and somebody's running with, you know, their presentation, and they make a comment like, oh, I think somebody mentioned recently in an article, and I'd have that article. I can just share it in the chat and like immediately be able to share that kind of information with people without actually having to like chime in or, you know, steal someone's spotlight or whatever. You know, it's collaboration and on multiple fronts, if you will. Yeah. So now let's move on to the call tool. And this, I would say, is probably one of the more basic features of Teams, but I don't think it necessarily needs to be complicated. So the call tool in Teams functions similarly to a phone book, where you can see a list of contacts that you have, as well as a call history, maybe calls that have been outgoing, incoming, how long was the call, when was it made. Calls can be solely audio or audio and video, depending upon what you prefer. And you do have some additional phone features at the bottom of the screen too, where you can forward calls and you can make some adjustments to your audio setup.
Yeah, and I think for me, I really love, it's not the flashiest feature of the solution for sure, but it functions exactly like a phone, which I really like. Whether I'm calling someone and they're not available, or someone's calling me and I'm in a meeting, you can literally leave a voicemail on Teams, and I can just go click on it and listen to it, see what somebody wanted to talk about. And yeah, and it shows all your missed calls, so you can just click right there and call that person back whenever you're available. So again, it's basic, but it functions really well, and I like that.
Mm-hmm. Most definitely. Moving on to the files tool now at the bottom of this list on the left. Files is really where Teams shines, in my opinion. It's what files kind of bring to the table in terms of collaborating and sharing documents with your colleagues across departments or across your units, across your teams. And you have some different views for how you can view different file collaboration, where things are located, maybe who's been working on them and how recently. So speaking of recently, these are some of the primary views you have for your files. So under recent, this just gives me a picture of some of the documents that I have been working on over the past week or so. And this page is very handy for people who are actively working across multiple teams on different files. So let's look at the actual Microsoft Teams view here. And this icon simply just takes you to a page where you can view all of the available documents, visible or accessible to you based on the teams you're involved with. You can see not only the location of the file, but who has been modifying it, as well as when they've been modifying it. And what you saw on my Teams page up here is I'm involved in quite a number of different teams, and I'm involved in different communications and files, across all of these teams. So it means there's a lot of opportunity for me to lose where exactly everything's located. So this is a great way to kind of sync myself and figure out, okay, I've had that one document I had up yesterday. I lost it. Where was I on that? Quick access right here. And as your teams mature and become more complex in terms of file sharing and project management, it can be a challenge to keep track of all of those things. So this page is a great reference for finding files and knowing who's working on what, when, and where. Now moving right along to the apps tool at the bottom of this panel. This is where you can find some additional apps to add to your Teams toolkit. And you've really got a full menu of options from Microsoft. You can use some of these different filters here to view maybe what are some popular apps recently in Teams, their top picks, maybe what they would suggest to you to add to your toolkit, as well as what's new, what are recent apps that they've added. And this list is constantly growing. As you can see, I mean, it just keeps scrolling. And last, but certainly not least, I'm going to take you to the help icon here at the very bottom. You can search by topics, training, or what's new. And we'll start with topics right here. And this is really just kind of a simple menu of support and reference guides for, if you need help with how to make calls or planning a meeting. Lots of different guidance from Microsoft on this. Even looking at training too. Teams offers all kinds of short tutorials and guides that could be helpful for you if you want to dive into a very specific aspect of the platform to learn more about. And these videos are, very short, very easily digestible. You don't have to commit to like a 4-hour training session just to figure out like how to, organize a Teams group and adjust, your privileges or ownership of that Teams group. So it's a great reference to have on hand for some just quick guides and tutorials. Moving along to what's new. This is an active feed of what Microsoft is doing to Teams, how they're updating and improving the platform. And this can be also a great reference to have if you've noticed maybe some subtle changes recently and you're like, has Teams, made some updates? Go to this page and they can give you, some specific guidance around maybe what has changed in terms of the interface or general functionality of the platform and what's happening across different iterations of Teams too.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite things about the tool overall is how it's constantly changing. For our company, and I think really any business, you want the tools that you use to be able to grow with you if possible. So it's nice that they're constantly updating and adapting to, the world as it continues to shift. And I will point out that I use Teams every day, and until this webinar, I had no idea that training tab existed at all. So I will definitely be taking advantage of that. But even I learned something from this webinar, so that's pretty cool.
Glad to hear it, Maddie.
Yeah, so one last thing before we kind of wrap up our Teams demo here, Karaline, is I want to ask you your best kept secret. What do you think is the best kept secret about Teams?
Best kept secret. There's a lot of different secrets in Teams. Like Maddie said, they're constantly updating the platform. So I feel like every time I turn around, I'm learning something new, or like there's like a new feature or something. I think one pretty cool feature in Teams that is oftentimes overlooked, because I know I overlooked it for quite a long time, was the search bar up here. So I mean, as with any sort of application or even a website, you typically have a search bar, and usually it's primarily just defined different files or messages or whatnot. But Teams takes it a bit further and offers a list of commands, which kind of takes the search bar to the next level. So I type that / to view command options, and I can actually call people from the search bar. I can chat with people from the search bar. So that's pretty cool, in my opinion. So for instance, like with chat, I can message Maddie directly from here, and I can send a chat here. And I'll Maddie, was that you?
It was. I got your message.
Yeah. So how that might be helpful is, say, for instance, I'm working in a document in Teams and I'm editing it, and I want to send a quick message to somebody, but I don't want to lose sight of my document, or I don't want to hop into, a different pane within Teams. I can do a lot of different things just from this search bar at the top of the screen. So that's my cool tip / trick.
Awesome. Okay, well, that kind of wraps up our demo portion. I do have one last poll, which is a little bit more general, that I want to share with the audience, which is just how can we as NetGain help you meet your goals, obviously within collaboration tools for your technology, or just various other technology elements that you may want assistance with. So you can go ahead and just click your answer on the screen there. And while we're letting those answers filter in, Karaline, I'd just kind of love to know your sort of closing thoughts about Teams and how it can make a difference.
Yeah, closing thoughts. I think when it comes to a lot of these communication and collaboration tools, I've got to say that, no tool is perfect, and it can be a real challenge to find one that's going to meet all of your needs. And it's a challenge in and of itself to learn a new application and introduce something new and different to your company and to your employees. So our transition into Teams, it did take some time. And I think what we found was most helpful was to actually have some like in-house trainings. We had one of our project managers actually offer up, a series of internal trainings that we ran, and that really helped everybody to feel more comfortable with the platform. I think everybody learned some different and new and exciting features with it. And I would say, like, on a personal basis too, learning more about Teams, what I did was just really self-exploration, looking online for different guides, viewing a lot of different web forums to see maybe how other organizations or companies were using Teams. And I would say really that goes beyond Teams too, of, if you want to get comfortable and learn more about an application, poke around with it. Feel free to get a little adventuresome, figure out what works for you, what doesn't work, and, personal experience. That's kind of my take and my approach to learning a new app myself is more through exploration rather than just kind of like reading about it online. So yeah, I've enjoyed Teams. It's not perfect, but it's pretty stinking good. Like I said, like at the beginning, I'm definitely drinking the Teams Kool-Aid.
Yeah, I would echo that absolutely. And I think for me and the organization in general, I love the cultural aspect that we've been able to cultivate for that. I think that's pretty cool. I don't know how many other organizations are doing that. There may be a bunch, but I just really like that our executive team kind of took the time to think to how to leverage this tool in a way that keeps us all connected. I think that's really important. Obviously, the past, almost 2 years hasn't been the easiest transition in many ways, and so it's nice to stay connected. And in terms of my professional life as well, it's just made things a lot easier in terms of collaboration and making sure things are getting done. So yeah, I think it's this or other collaboration tools are definitely something to consider if you haven't put a lot of thought into them yet, as we kind of adapt to the new workplace. So those are kind of my closing thoughts. I'm going to go ahead and close this poll, and we have a good amount of questions here. So I'm going to just kind of jump into it, Karaline, and start throwing them at you. So,
Okay.
All right. So our first question is, are files accessible to only the members of that particular team? So assuming you're not, sharing the file or copying it to another team, can only the members of that one team see the file?
Potentially, yes. It does depend upon kind of the settings you have in place, the permissions that you have tied to that document or those files. And that can be set on a team level or on a specific file level. It doesn't have to be a setting, across the team that, everybody can only view files within the team. You can set it to where just viewing privileges or viewing and editing.
Yeah, absolutely. And somebody else was asking, so with the chat feature, you mentioned that you can kind of have like group messages within a meeting or just a particular group. Does that show when the chat pops up, does it show which group it's a part of versus like, it coming from one particular individual?
Yes, it will. It will show, let's see, I probably should, maybe I should share my screen for this, but yes, it will have almost like a title to show exactly if it's multiple people within the team that you're getting that chat from. It will like list out the names. If it's for a chat within a meeting that you have on the calendar, the chat title will match that calendar title. So you will be able to see exactly who's tied to that chat feed.
Great. I apologize, everyone. I'm having some technical difficulties here, but I'm trying to get to the rest of our questions. So just give me 1 second. And okay, this is interesting. Somebody's asking, would you eliminate Slack because you have the chat feature? I think, they're asking if you went ahead and engaged Microsoft Teams as a solution, would you go ahead and eliminate Slack?
I would think that it's a loaded question, and I've got different advice. How are you using Slack? Are you using it just for like just chatting back and forth, or using it for project management. I know there's a lot of different capabilities with Slack, so maybe seeing where it aligns with Teams and different capabilities between the two platforms. Actually, I think there might even be an integration with Teams and Slack. If you were wanting to move away from Slack, I think it would be probably optimal to make maybe like a short-term transition period of being like, hey, this is going away in a month. So maybe like don't use it as much, get more familiar with Teams and what that chat feature looks like. My opinion is to kind of keep everything in, all in one. If you're going to use a chat tool and you're in Teams already and using it for different purposes, then I would say keep your chat within Teams. I can attest, I feel within NetGain, we kind of ran through that too. We were using Jabber for a period of time, and we were also using Teams and a couple of other measures. And I don't think we actually said like, hey, here's the drop dead date, don't use Jabber, because we're actually still, actively using Jabber specifically for some of our client communications. But internally, we also use Jabber to, chat message back and forth. And organically over time, everybody's transitioned to Teams. So depending upon your workplace, the culture, their different habits and expectations for what chat looks like across different groups, you might find that Teams will work better for your team.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I'm in the same boat. I did use Jabber, but then over time I kind of just transitioned to solely using Teams. So we got another question. So is the phone part of the calls, is that part reliant on the Teams calling feature? So I think they're asking maybe like, is it you have to make the calls within that particular section of Teams?
Well, actually, you can make calls from multiple windows within Teams. It's similar to the chat feature. Like I pointed out, I can chat with people from within the calendar. I can chat with people from that search bar. Similar premise to calling. I want to, let me see. I won't share my screen, but yes, you can. There is that. You know what, Maddie? Can I share my screen?
Yeah, you can.
Okay.
Here, hang on one second here. You go right ahead. And I will say, as Karaline's kind of pulling that up, I also really like the calling feature because you can use it on the mobile app as well. And just for me personally, if I'm on the go and I need to make a quick call or something like that, I think it's nice to have that option.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah. So that question right there for chat and call. No, you don't have to be in the calls to make a phone call. For instance, right here, I've got this marketing group chat. I can pull up with them right now, make a video call with all of them, or a phone call with all of them without the video. So yeah, lots of versatility among the different apps within Teams, and being able to use, chat feature in different areas, being able to make phone calls in different areas. And another thing that's kind of cool too, with the phone calls, video or non, and even that Meet Now function that I brought up in the calendar. There's been some cases where I've had a phone call with somebody and we go off on a side tangent. It's like, you know what? I would really love for us to share screens and actually collaborate on a document. I can actually meet with somebody, pull up Meet Now, choose to not opt to have audio connected to where we're still talking on the phone, but then voila, now we're like actively collaborating with like screen shares too. So you can get kind of creative with how you use Teams, especially as you're moving from, like phone to computer or whatnot. And I do want to give a quick shout out to like Teams on my phone. It has come in so handy when I'm like on the road doing random stuff, making a shipment, and somebody asks about a street address, and I'm like, oh, I don't know. I can pull up Teams app and I could pull up my, Excel spreadsheet with that address on there. I was on PTO last week and I got a call from somebody and they're like, hey, is so-and-so in the office? I need them to, print off a document or whatnot. And I was like, I have no idea. Let me pull up Teams, and I can chat them and see if they're in the office and we can collaborate. So it's really nice being able to have the application on my phone to where I can pull up Teams and I can access documents, some limited document editing options within the phone app, but you know, I don't expect to be able to edit and you know, add some, you know, Excel commands to a spreadsheet or something for, you know, adding data or whatnot.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we've got a few more to get through here. So let's see. So somebody's asking, so you still store the files on your servers. Is Teams more for just working documents? So why don't you explain a little bit about how that storage and all that works?
Mm-hmm. So everything that you share within Teams syncs directly to your cloud storage. So if you want to, and we also, like, say for instance here, let me see if I can bring it up. We have everything in OneDrive, and then we also have everything in SharePoint. So having it in Teams, yes, it syncs directly to whatever, you know, cloud storage you have in place. But some people might not, that might not be the best option for collaborating on documents, accessing it through, you know, files and looking at, you know, where the different document is located. I would say where Teams shines for that is really more the active document collaboration options for working on different files. I hope that
Yeah,
answers it.
absolutely. And I'll take this next question since Caroline's gotten so many, but somebody asked who manages the Teams environment and how is it governed? And I can just give you a basic answer to that, which is, you know, it's a cloud application. It's part of Microsoft 365, and obviously your IT department can set up and manage it for you. And then within, you know, different teams, and Caroline, correct me if I'm wrong about this, but I believe there's usually somebody who has sort of administrative privileges so they can add and remove people from teams and things like that. So within the individual teams, that's sort of how you manage that.
Yeah, most definitely. Can you still see my screen? Am I still sharing?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So within each team, you do have different options for managing what that team looks like, adding members, adding channels. So you can actually hop into manage team. You can have different owners, and here's your your members and guests. So you can set up a lot of the privileges on a team-to-team basis, kind of on the front end of what teams look like. On the back end, in terms of maybe security, file sharing and storage, permissions for that, you can kind of loop in your internal IT team to kind of set up some of that, those permissions and privileges too. I know one company that we worked with recently for some Teams training, theirs was a bit more buttoned up in terms of, you know, the employees' ability to be able to create their own teams. They had to actually work through their internal IT team to get that set up and started. So it kind of depends, you know, company by company, how adventurous do you want your employees to be in terms of, like, you know, setting up all kinds of different teams and file sharing and file privileges, or do you want to have it more buttoned up and locked down in terms of, you know, if people want to create a team, they have to go to this person to be able to create it.
Yeah. All right. So it looks like we've got two more questions. So I think we kind of touched on this, but can you speak to integration with SharePoint, with Microsoft SharePoint? So I think you touched on that a little bit, but if you want to elaborate just a little bit more.
Yeah, so that really is where I would say, like, the file storage comes into play. Is we've got everything synced to OneDrive and to SharePoint. So whatever documents I've got saved and stored here, they're similarly being saved and stored in SharePoint. Personal opinion, Teams is a bit more easy to navigate than SharePoint is, and that's kind of on a company by company basis. You know, how is your SharePoint organized? I used to work the previous job that I worked at, you know, several years ago. The SharePoint was chaos, and nobody could ever find anything in there. So it depends on like how well you've got things organized. And it is kind of nice to know that you do have those two separate locations to pull your information from. You know, if you can't find it in Teams, or Teams crashes on you, or, you know, you run into some sort of an issue where you need to access a file and you can't in Teams, you've got that assurance of having that backup location that you can access that file.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Last but certainly not least, because I think this is actually something important to touch on just briefly. Obviously, we're not security experts, but I do think it's something to touch on, which is how can we kind of protect files within Teams? So why don't you can speak maybe a little bit to MFA and Microsoft 365, how that all works.
Oh yeah, most definitely. So Microsoft Teams does support MFA, so you do have that added level of security for people logging in and out of Teams. You know, when you do bring up that you can access Teams online, on desktop, and on your phone, you know, I don't know about you, but I do kind of get that, oh gosh, you know, am I being secure? Am I logging in the right way? So I feel pretty confident in Teams, especially having that added level of security in place with the logins, that everything is secure and stored. And once again, with cloud storage and backup too, you do have those parameters in place for locking down some of your files and having backups available for them if anything goes wrong. Specifically with files too, let me see if I can bring up an example. You can set in place specific permissions with certain documents within your team. I think I mentioned that earlier, to where you could have different properties for how permissions, for how people might be able to like edit or not edit certain documents. So it's kind of another level of more like internal security, if you will.
Yeah,
I think that
absolutely.
answers the question.
Yeah, and I think, and just in general, if you have any other specific security questions, you know, we have a great security team at NetGain, so feel free to reach out and definitely consult your IT security team whenever you're adding these kind of new tools to your technology environment. But I think that
I want to make, wait, one more note on that is permissions within teams and across teams too. Like say you have one team that is, you know, your executive team, and you've got maybe some more high level documents that not the rest of the company needs to see or something, you can lock that team down a bit more to where none of those documents are going to be shared or viewable by other people and other teams that you're a part of. So you do have that level of control over your documents, even on like a team basis, in terms of how you're collaborating with other teams that you're a part of.
Yeah, very cool. All right, well, thank you everyone so much for all of your awesome questions. Those were super great. I hope they helped out everyone in the audience to learn a little bit more about Teams. And thanks, Karaline, so much for sharing all of your expertise with us today. I think it was super insightful, so really appreciate it. And thanks to everyone in the audience for joining. So hope you have a great rest of your day, and feel free to reach out if you have any other questions.
Thanks, Maddie.